Hello, everybody. And again, I feel like I'm always apologizing, but that's technology for you. I've just been told that we are live, which is great. Again, we had some technical difficulties, but you're all so welcome to this month's In Conversation with live, eventually broadcast. So each month we introduce you to one of Maricoy's wonderful expert patients. Today we're bringing you two. Dan and Jennifer Digmann, a couple brought together by multiple sclerosis. So Jennifer was diagnosed in 1997 and has secondary progressive MS. Dan was diagnosed in 2000 and has relapsing remitting MS. The couple met at a National Multiple Sclerosis Society event in 2002, where love blossomed. They were married in 2005, and since then they have dedicated their lives to MS activism and helping others to live their best life. Dan and Jennifer connect with audiences nationwide and now globally through their inspirational stories of life, of love, and of overcoming adversity through their blog and their podcast, which is called A Couple Takes on MS, and their video content on their YouTube channel. They co-wrote the book Despite MS, to Spite MS, and in 2015, they were inducted into the NMSS Volunteer Hall of Fame for Advocacy. Wow, that's quite something, you two. I did forget to mention that they happen to be one of the loveliest couples I've ever had the pleasure of speaking with.
Oh, thank you very much.
Well, your love and your commitment to each other positively shine through. And so maybe for those who aren't familiar with the story, could we start by sharing a little bit of the backstory about how you two met?
We met at it was a National MS Society event, and it was intended for women, but they forgot to put that on the flyer to say, and somebody was an organizer, this girl. And so when I showed up I got invited to the event because they needed more men to attend because men started showing up, and I was a leader of a self-help group. And so they had called me to say, would you be interested in going? And so I went. And when I showed up, the volunteer who encouraged me to attend, she says, why don't you sit over there at that table? Because that's Jennifer's table. And you're both younger and you both have MS, so you might have some things in common. And well.
And we did. And Dan is adorable. And instantly I felt very comfortable. Keep in mind, this program was maybe, say it was September, and I'd somewhat, I never like to say, I don't know the proper way to say this, but I wasn't able to walk and I'd started using a wheelchair. So I was still a little uncomfortable, and Dan made me feel comfortable and nothing to be embarrassed about. And that was, he's a great guy to begin with, but then that he understood my MS experience that much more. And I felt very comfortable, and we just hit it off that day, and we've been together ever since.
Yeah.
Oh, can you tell me what's it like to be, it's kind of unusual to be, I haven't come across many couples that are both patient of a condition and a caregiver at the same time. And you've spoken about how you are each other's supporter. How do you best support each other, or what would you say to anybody who's listening in around how to support each other when you're both patient and caregiver at the same time?
I think patience is so important. And that's interesting because you're a patient, but you need to be patient. And so when something happens, and if it's frustrating, I always try and stop, take a breath, and then I try not to react. And I'm a little fiery like that. Sometimes I react, but Dan's a little more patient, and I would say that's important. What about you?
I think patient, and I think just listening and understanding and being empathetic, because it's like, you don't know who's dealing with, it's almost like who has a worse day today, who's going to be the patient, who's going to be the caregiver. And sometimes it's moment by moment, day by day. I mean, it's just like, because if I'm helping Jennifer transfer It's like, and if something goes wrong, well, then all of a sudden it's really, she's the one you focus on. And then other times, if it's, I fall or something, then I'm the patient. It's just like, it's just understanding and being alert to what's going on around you, and always not being selfish about things. I think that's the big thing. It's just always being empathetic, always being there for the team, not for yourself.
And always be honest. If Dan's having a bad day and I'm having a bad day, we have to communicate that, and and you don't want to be honest to the point that you hurt the other person's feelings, but you need to be honest. And we use the team metaphor quite often. I don't know if it's because we're from the Midwest, but we have to remember that we're on the same team. And so I think that really gives us that strength to persevere and just patient and kind.
Well, that sounds like good advice for any couple, whether they have, whether they're dealing with a condition or not. Because, gosh, when I think about it, life is a condition. Life is hard. We all have our struggles in life. So yeah. I feel like that's wonderful advice, no matter who's listening in. That patience and that kindness as well. I want to talk a little bit about advocacy now. And for those listening in, you may be aware, or maybe you're not aware, that World Brain Day is taking place this Friday, which is Friday, July 22nd. And it's a day to highlight, among other things, advocacy across neurological disorders, and also equitable access to resources and treatment. And I know this is something that really informs your advocacy as well. So I'd like to hear from you about what it means to you both personally to advocate for other patients living with MS.
I think for me, obviously, we always say you need to be your own best advocate, because nobody else knows your situation better than you. And so if things are going bad for you, you need to talk about it and make it known. I mean, and for me, I'm to advocate for myself, and you share your own personal stories. But what makes it easier for me is doing it, knowing I'm doing it for somebody else. And I think that's why, the marriage works, because sometimes it's just easier to help other people because it makes you feel better. And so, and if I'm advocating for me, that feels very selfish, but it's just like, so to be able to advocate for others, that's just a pretty big deal. It's pretty special that way.
And multiple sclerosis, both Dan and I will say, it has a skill to make you feel weak. I mean, certainly I haven't walked in over 20 years, and that's a huge part of your life. And you can feel very down on your luck and very sad and very weak. But by advocating, there is so much strength in my story, in linking up with my community. And I think that gives you back that piece that may be missing, just to share your story. And here in the United States, we meet with legislators. As a matter of fact, Friday, I'm scheduling our August recess visits with legislators. So that's advocacy here that feels powerful, sharing my story, talking about increased access to medication, lowering prescription drug prices. And like Dan says, you make it not so much about yourself, but you're helping other people living with your condition. Powerful.
I'm actually struck, and I think maybe on a previous call, I might have mentioned to you both a book by a sociologist, a Canadian sociologist called Arthur Frank. It's called The Wounded Storyteller. But it actually reminds me what you're saying. When we become ill with a chronic condition, we lose the sense of who we are. And it's something about advocacy, which it reframes the experience. Is that something that resonates with you?
And two things you've said. I ordered the book and I received it yesterday. So I look forward to reading it.
Oh, wonderful.
Yes.
And, wonderful.
Yeah. And I do think advocacy makes both Dan and I feel there's a reason we were diagnosed with multiple sclerosis. And this is part of it, is to help other people. You know, the patient journey was talked about so often, but our journey includes other people. Here in the United States, there's nearly 1 million people diagnosed with MS, and I believe it's 2.5 worldwide.
Yeah, 2.5 worldwide. And so, and it's like, and you use your story. I think we were talking earlier too about how you go to presentations and you remember the stories. And so it's like,
Yes.
you know, when we can give you all the facts about multiple sclerosis, but when you're talking to other people, it's the stories you remember. And so it's just like pushing those stories just as a springboard to then be able to talk to other people or talk for other people. And then it's like, then you open up so much in conversations, and then you're talking to other people with multiple sclerosis or whatever condition you're living with. And then all of a sudden you don't feel so isolated. You don't feel so alone, because all of a sudden you see there's how many other people who know exactly what you're dealing with. And so that gives you power, knowing you're not alone.
And I think as well, there's something around, I don't have MS, but I have my own experience of being a patient, but I can connect with you at different points of your story as well. So there's a commonality that we can share through our stories. So the story is very powerful. And sometimes the patient story is dismissed as just, oh, it's the patient story. But actually, there's huge power in that story. So, and you tell your story so well and so beautifully, but you do it through a lot of different medium. So I did put it up. I'm going to put it up again. I think it's going to come up again. Your website is acoupletakesonms.com. And if you go on your website, you have a blog, you have video, you have a YouTube channel, you have a podcast, you have all these different ways of telling your story. Now, I love social media. I love online communication. I think it helps us to amplify our story. From your point of view, using social media, how has that helped to amplify your story? And what do you enjoy most around it? Like, what's the most fun aspect of it?
Well, selfishly, I'm going to say right now it's 8:30 in the morning here in the United States, and I'm having a conversation with my husband and a friend in Ireland.
Oh,
How amazing is that? You know, social media makes the world a much smaller place. And when you share stories about your life and details, you instantly become friends with the people you connect with. And, you know, during the pandemic, it was so nice to have that support. When you couldn't have in person, you can share those warm connections with people across the country, across the world now. I mean, that's for me.
I think that, you know, you can talk social media, and I mean, there's other ways to share your story. The tried, you know, the old school way. I mean, you write letters to the editor, to newspapers, to things like that. But I mean, now social media, that's just like instantaneous. And you put something up there, and it's building the network, building the community. I mean, you talk about in the business world, it's all about making connections, and you're networking and doing this. Well, not that having a chronic illness is a business, but at the same time, you're building that network, you're building the community. And then all of a sudden, I'm having this issue. I don't have to wait around to talk to my neighbors. I don't have to wait for a monthly support group that I go to in person. I can throw it out there on, you know, on Facebook, on Twitter, on, you know, Instagram, whatever, many, many different ways to throw the stories out there to get answers to your questions, or just to make people realize that these are the things you're dealing with. So then if others are dealing with it, they have instant access to you. And it's just the social media, it can get overwhelming. But at the same time, that's where you build your community. It's like, we live in a town of about 25,000 people. Well, it's like, I know really 20 people here in the neighborhood, you know, so you build that connection, the close ones, so you can have a worldwide web, you know, connection. But it's just like, build your community and find who makes you strong, who gives you support. So
you both are very, you're what I would say sophisticated users of social media. There's a technology involved in producing a podcast, in producing those videos, and it's a lot of work. It is a lot of work. For somebody who's listening in and goes, I'm not sure I could ever quite do that, but I guess you both and myself share that feeling that social media really is an important part of an advocate's role. What advice would you give about, like, that would just maybe take it down? We don't have to be the Digmanns, but is there where would you say, where's a good place to start with social media?
With social media, with anything, it's sharing your story. For example, just advocate for yourself. There wasn't a curb cut at our church. And so for me, it's Michigan where we live. And in the winter, you have to drive my wheelchair a little further to get into church. And I said to our pastor, boy, if we had a curb cut here, that would make it easier for me, make it easier for some of the other members. And she said, well, certainly, let's make that happen. So advocacy, just the little changes you can make. And then Dan had mentioned social media, Twitter, getting your story out there. Just small steps, little things can get you started. Writing a letter to the editor or sharing your story on Instagram, connecting with someone. You don't have to, how do you eat an elephant? Little bites. And so you start small with things locally and things with your smartphone that you can do that's manageable. I don't use my right hand to type as well. So on social, like when a lot of Zoom contact, a lot of conversations are going, I don't participate in the typing, but I can talk. Marie. I'm not a typer necessarily, but with voice recognition, I can say things. So just find how you can communicate if you can make it accessible for you.
And truly start small. I mean, it's like we have a podcast, we have a website, we do, but you have YouTube and we have, Facebook Live. Think of all the other places on social media, Instagram. It's just all of the outlets. It's like, and then don't overwhelm yourself. Start small. Start with one. I mean, we've been living with this. We've been married for 17 years. It started small. I mean, we had a blog. Then you just keep adding and get good at this. And then, I mean, we just added a podcast like, a year and a half ago. And yeah, it takes a lot of work to do this stuff, but then carve out the time, pace yourself, and don't overwhelm yourself with it.
And surround yourself with people. Our podcast producer, Ryan, he helps us to get our content up there. And our support group, whether it be in person or online, we're just surrounded with so many people that can help us and share the load.
I love that. It's really good advice about starting small. And I guess one of the things I would add is you don't have to be everywhere, and do what you enjoy. If you enjoy and what comes naturally to you, if it comes naturally to you to speak. If it comes naturally to you to write. And then that's really how you start building that momentum.
Absolutely.
It's funny, actually, I'm kind of smiling to myself because I hadn't planned on talking about stories so much, but it just keeps coming up for me. And Jennifer and I were on a call yesterday, a Merricoy coffee chat call with other Merricoy patient experts. And we had a really interesting discussion on it about language and words. And I guess what I wanted to ask was, when we share our story, we choose words to describe that story, and it could be journey, it could be advocacy, it could be warrior, it could be. There's a lot of different words and terminology, and those words don't always resonate with everybody. And so I'm curious to know. How careful do we have to be around our words? Yeah, we do, but how much should we also own our experience? I'd love to hear some more about that from you.
I wasn't on the chat, so I could hear her talk. I think that, I write for a living, and that's what you do. And I mean, it's like you choose your words, you think of the audience, think of other people, but at the same time, you have to be authentic to yourself, be authentic to you. And I really think that's where part of the thing that we all have to do is just understand where the person is coming from. And if I use a term that's comfortable for me as a patient, then I would hope then if I respect that if others came to me and said that they're not comfortable with that term, I can understand that, but then you just hope that they give me the latitude and understanding that's me. That's, we talk about the patient journey, and it's sometimes, I don't have a better word for that, but it's just like, not a fan of the patient journey, but that's a term I use because it's like, as an editor, I can edit somebody's writing, and I cannot like what they said, or I'm thinking there could be a better way, but sometimes I just let it go because me as an editor, if I don't have a better way or a better solution to say it, I just give them latitude because those are the words that were authentic for them and I understood what they were saying. And so I can't say that language doesn't matter because I write. And so, of course, language is very fundamental, but at the same time, we all need to give each other the latitude to, and then have discussions if the words don't work.
And that's important. Sometimes, excuse me, if something doesn't sit well with you, if today the word warrior really is offensive to me, then tell me. Like, let's have a conversation. Communicate. I want to see your point. We don't always have to agree, but to have that conversation and just that communication is so important. And to get your, as we were discussing yesterday, Marie, I never thought about warrior in the sense of war being the first word, and and some people say, well, I didn't sign up for this. When I think of a journey, I think of a cruise or going someplace beautiful. And so multiple sclerosis journey, I'm like, yeah, today it doesn't feel so beautiful. I've got rain on my trip and I'm not enjoying it. So that's today. Maybe tomorrow that word's going to be perfect. So awareness is important.
And it goes back to what you said at the very beginning about how you support each other as a couple. It's about kindness, and it's about patience with each other and each other's experience. So it comes back to that kindness again. Mm-hmm. There's another word for story is narrative, and it's when we use like the patient narrative or the MS narrative or the MS experience. So being mindful of words. But one of the questions I also wanted to ask you is, do you think that there is anything that needs to change in the MS narrative that supports not only people that are just diagnosed, but also people like yourselves who've been living with the disease for decades?
I would say back when Dan and I were diagnosed, the narrative was don't exercise, don't overdo. There wasn't the emphasis on diet and well-being. And it was more, the medication that was available was nowhere like there is now, the treatments. And so I think the narrative has changed in that the patient has so much more power. And multiple sclerosis is not an easy disease to live with, but it's so much more manageable. And it's something where you can live a quality life. And so the story isn't just, I'm going to end up in a wheelchair. And if you do end up in a wheelchair like me, it's not like this, oh goodness, my life is over kind of thing. So I think that is changing. And I think younger people that are diagnosed or newly diagnosed people, they have such a different experience than we had 25 years ago. And so that's powerful. It goes back to power and storytelling.
Yeah. And I just think, the narrative needs to, like, when people are newly diagnosed, and now we're, 20 plus years each into this disease. And so the narrative needs to continue to incorporate and include people who've had the disease longer, and, for the newly diagnosed. And it's just, and I think, we're hoping and trying to change the narrative. It's like just to have positive stories. I mean, and that's where, because it's not a good trip. I mean, MS is just, it throws a lot off, but at the same time, I'm just wanting to show that it's like just how much attitude makes a difference. And but there's a lot of things you can't control with the disease, but it's like your perspective and outlook. Because I didn't give up after I was diagnosed, and like, what, 2 years later, I met her. And then you're just like, that's just how you keep yourself out there. And so I think just the narrative to stay engaged, that's a big push.
Yeah. So we're kind of coming towards the end now, and Maria, I don't know. I have Maria as the in the back room there. I'm not sure if there's any questions that are coming through or comments, but I guess as we're starting to wind this up, I'd just love for you to maybe share a closing thought, or maybe something that you wished that people would really take away from this to know about MS or whatever. This is your space to say what you want. So maybe that closing thought.
Just that when Dan and I were diagnosed, there were 3 available medications to treat the progression of the disease. And now there are over 20. So there's progress, there's changes being made. Since I have been diagnosed, I've never met someone who doesn't know someone else in their family or in their circle of friends living with multiple sclerosis. It's a prevalent disease. And if we're out there and we're sharing our story, that really helps to not only make me and Dan feel better, but just to help the people out there. They can share their story. And I think that is so important. It's just like Dan said, to stay engaged and to stay active. So
Thanks, Jennifer.
And I think then talking about multiple sclerosis and caregiving, I think just caregiving in general, it is just that listening and being empathetic and just knowing, what the other person is dealing with. And I mean, if both parties, both people understood that, I think that it's like a lot more things would go better. I think, because there was one time when we first got married, and Jennifer, a transfer went bad, and I was upset, and then Jennifer thought I was upset at her. But it's like, it's that understanding that it's like you're upset with the disease, and that it's like you're both fighting the same enemy, the same opponent. And so it's like, how do you team up? So I just really think whoever is on your team, so when you're dealing with caregiving relationships, you're on the same team, but you build a bigger team with family, friends, doctors, and everything, and find and learn to trust your team. And you don't have to do it all yourself. And Jennifer's going to laugh when I say, don't be afraid to ask for help, because I never do, but do as I say, not as I do. But it's just that asking for help, because I never wanted to ask for help when I was newly diagnosed, but it's like in asking, and somebody once said, in asking for help, you're giving that other person the opportunity to do something that you would do for them if they asked. So it's just like, you're not being selfish. It's just ask for the help, because it makes everything easier for you, and you're not alone. So that's a big thing.
I love that. And now that we're coming to the end, the comments are coming in. And so I know you might be able to see them on the screen, and maybe people can read them again, but I just want to speak them out here. And I'm sorry, I don't know the name of the person who said this, but it's a super agreement with what you said about the words we use. We should not be, it's just gone off my screen. I think I can actually bring it up there. Oh, there we go.
Yeah.
Oh, I've hidden your lovely faces, but I'll only keep it up for a minute. We shouldn't be scared to use our words to shape our reality. And if we hurt somebody, we just try to understand the other's point of view and share ours. If it's our reality, It can't be wrong. Also, several patients are sharing their stories and are not English natives. It's much harder to find the right words. Oh my gosh, that's a really good point as well.
Yeah.
Use those that you feel works for you and that others can understand. Thank you. I don't know who left that comment, but thank you. It's a wonderful comment. So Guillaume, you're wondering about the name of the book. Yeah, for sure. It is called The Wounded Storyteller by Arthur Frank. I can put that in some space so that we can see that publicly. I'll pop that up onto LinkedIn as well. And somebody else is really enjoying the session. It's very meaningful and you're so sweet. I did promise you the loveliest couple and we delivered.
Thank you.
And you're so cute. Their words, but also mine. Thank you. And Guillaume has said it's a pleasure to listen to you and we'll promote the replay. Thank you so much. And that just leads me very nicely into what I always say at the end. We will provide the recorded version of this. It'll be up on our YouTube channel. We will also provide not a transcript, a summary of what we spoke and the main themes we spoke about, which will be up on our blog. So I have got the details here. If you're not familiar with Marikoi, if you go to marikoi.com, you'll find our blog. And in the next, we'll actually publish it on Friday to coincide with World Brain Day. So keep an eye that day for the video, and the blog will be up on the website.
Nice.
So I guess there's nothing more for me to say except thank you. Thank you so much for sharing your story, for your generosity of spirit, and just for being you and for being a light in the world, not just to MS patients, but to so many patients. I'm so grateful to you. And this has been an absolute personal pleasure and a joy to have spoken to you today. Thank you.
Thank you very much. It's been wonderful for us.
Yeah, thanks for having us. Thank you for all you did, because I mean, it was a great conversation. So thank you so much.
Thank you so much. And thank you everybody who has listened in live and will also be watching this broadcast. Next month, I think we're going to take a break, but our In Conversation With series will start again in September. So do keep an eye on our socials to learn more about who our next wonderful guest will be. So thank you all very much. Enjoy the rest of your summer. And for those who are hot in a country where it's really hot, stay safe and stay cool. So thanks everybody and goodbye.
Bye.
Goodbye.